On the morning of Saturday, March 9, 2024, a lawyer named Rob Turkowitz was sitting in an opulent conference room in downtown Charleston, South Carolina, waiting for his client. The client was supposed to be there by 9 in the morning for the third day of his deposition testimony against Boeing. He did not arrive. Turkowitz called his client's room at the Holiday Inn across the river. No answer. He called his cell phone. No answer. He called the hotel again and asked them to check the room. The hotel manager came back and said his things were packed up, but he was not there. The truck was still in the parking lot. At 9:42 in the morning, a hotel staff member heard a gunshot. At 10 in the morning, Turkowitz called, asking for a wellness check. At 11:11 exactly, he got the call back. John Barnett was dead in the parking lot, in his truck, gunshot wound to the head. He had spent the 2 previous days testifying for 12 hours about what he had seen Boeing do to the planes carrying hundreds of millions of passengers around the world. He had spent 7 years in court trying to prove it. He had spent 32 years at Boeing trying to stop it from the inside. His lawyers said he had been in good spirits the night before, excited to be telling his side of the story. Looking forward to finishing, he told them, "Let us just get it done. I have already been waiting for 7 years." He never got the third day. His final words on the subject he had devoted his life to were recorded the evening before his death. In his own deposition testimony, the Charleston County coroner ruled his death self-inflicted. A note was found in the passenger seat. It said, "I pray Boeing pays." This is his story, and the next time you board a plane, you need to hear it. John Mitchell Barnett was born in Mount Shasta, California, on February 23, 1962. He grew up in Louisiana after his parents separated. He was known to friends as Swampy and to family as Mitch. He was a burly man with shoulder-length hair, framing a walrus mustache and a goatee. He had a practical working-class ethic built on decades of doing exacting work in high-pressure environments where the consequences of getting it wrong were measured in human lives. He spent his early career at Rockwell International, working on components connected to NASA's Space Shuttle program. Then he joined Boeing at its plant in Everett, Washington, where the company built the 747, the 767, and the 777. He was impressed by what he found there. He later said, Boeing Everett had a genuine culture of attention to quality and safety. He developed an 11-course curriculum for training other quality auditors. He rose through the ranks. He became a quality manager. He trusted the company he worked for. Then, in 2010, Boeing transferred him to its new plant in North Charleston, South Carolina. The plant had been built to assemble the 787 Dreamliner, Boeing's flagship wide-body passenger aircraft. The plane carrying up to 330 passengers on long-haul routes across the world. The plane that you may have flown on yourself. What Barnett found in Charleston was not what he had left behind in Everett. He described the management culture in South Carolina as coming from a military background rather than a commercial aviation background. The attitude he encountered, he summarized in one phrase: "We are in Charleston and we can do anything we want." The motto, he said, was, "Push planes out the door and make the cash register ring." He later described the factory's approach in a way that became widely quoted. The whole place smelled of French fries. What he meant was that mechanics were being hired from fast food restaurants and retail stores and given minimal training before being put to work on aircraft carrying hundreds of millions of passengers. What Barnett began documenting in those first years in Charleston was not a single incident or a single failure. It was a systematic pattern of pressure to overlook defects and to keep the assembly line moving, regardless of what was wrong with the planes coming off it. Managers pressured and encouraged workers not to document defects. This resulted in inaccurate build records, which constituted a violation of FAA regulations. When Barnett brought defects to the attention of management, He was told he was finding too many defects. When a follow-up inspection was arranged, Barnett was excluded. Only 2 inspectors were given a truncated timeline that allowed them time to document 50 defects instead of the 300 Barnett had found. They received accolades for it. A program was implemented that allowed mechanics to inspect and verify their own work, eliminating quality inspection employees entirely. The ratio of quality inspectors to mechanics that Barnett had known at Everett was 1 inspector for every 9 mechanics. In Charleston, it was 1 inspector for every 50 to 100 mechanics. One specific problem haunted Barnett throughout his years in Charleston and became central to his later testimony. When workers installed titanium bolts into components called E-nuts that hold the passenger deck in place, the defective nuts caused razor-sharp metal slivers up to 3 inches long to fall into the area directly below the passenger floor. That area contains the flight control wires and electronics that operate the entire plane. Barnett warned his supervisors repeatedly that these metal slivers posed a serious risk of short circuits that could cause catastrophic failures in flight. He recommended that workers remove the panels and clean out the slivers before the planes were delivered. Management refused. The cleanup work was too expensive and would slow down the assembly line. Barnett said his supervisor banned him from the investigation into the titanium slivers issue. There was another problem: the emergency oxygen system. On the 787 Dreamliner, every passenger seat is equipped with an emergency oxygen mask that drops from the overhead compartment if the cabin loses pressure. Barnett discovered that oxygen bottles were failing pre-installation tests at a rate of approximately 25%. 1 in 4 oxygen systems was failing before the planes were even delivered. Barnett reported this to his superiors. Boeing's own internal investigation later confirmed his findings and found that some oxygen bottles were not deploying properly. And there was the problem of the missing parts. At one point, Barnett documented that at least 53 non-conforming parts had been installed on 787 aircraft, and their locations within those aircraft were simply unknown. They had been installed in violation of FAA standards, and nobody could say with certainty where, on which planes those parts were located. Boeing's response to John Barnett was not to fix the problems. It was to fix John Barnett. Barnett was subjected to what his lawsuit would later describe as a concerted campaign of harassment, abuse, and intimidation intended to discourage, discredit, and humiliate him until he would either give up or be discredited. He received performance management scores designed to undermine his career. He was separated from his team and relocated to isolated areas of the plant. He was blacklisted and blocked from transferring to other Boeing divisions. He was subjected to what he called a gaslighting campaign, in which managers spread rumors that he could not get along with colleagues. He told his lawyers he received 21 phone calls from management in a single day. He said he had never been called 21 times in a day, not even by a girlfriend. In January 2017, Barnett filed a whistleblower complaint with the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, alleging that Boeing had retaliated against him for raising safety concerns. 2 months later, he retired. 10 years earlier than he had planned. He knew he was going to be terminated if he stayed. He moved back to Louisiana, but he did not go quietly. In April 2019, Barnett spoke publicly for the first time when he gave an extensive interview to the New York Times, alongside other former Boeing employees, raising similar concerns. He described a factory where defects were being deliberately concealed to meet production deadlines. He said he would not trust planes made in South Carolina to be airworthy. He said, "It keeps me up at night." The story of what Barnett had been fighting about inside Boeing for years landed at the worst possible moment for the company. In October 2018, a Lion Air Boeing 737 MAX crashed minutes after takeoff from Jakarta, Indonesia, killing all 189 people on board. In March 2019, an Ethiopian Airlines Boeing 737 MAX crashed minutes after takeoff from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, killing all 157 people on board. 346 people killed in 2 crashes 5 months apart, both caused by the same flawed flight control system, a system that activated based on data from a single sensor with no redundancy, a point of failure so fundamental that it should never have existed on a commercial aircraft carrying hundreds of passengers. The 737 MAX was grounded worldwide for 20 months while investigations unfolded. Congressional hearings revealed the extent to which Boeing had prioritized speed and profit over safety. The FAA, that was supposed to be independently regulating Boeing, was shown to have delegated enormous amounts of its own certification authority back to Boeing itself. Against that backdrop, John Barnett was no longer just a retired quality manager with a personal dispute against his former employer. He was a man who had been saying for years exactly what the investigations into those 346 deaths were now confirming about the culture inside Boeing. His case attracted attention worldwide. He was featured in a 2022 Netflix documentary called Downfall: The Case Against Boeing. And in 2021, when OSHA declined to rule in his favor on his original whistleblower complaint, he appealed and amended his case, bringing a federal lawsuit in the United States District Court for the District of South Carolina. The core allegation was that Boeing had deliberately destroyed his career because he had refused to look the other way. By early 2024, Barnett's case was finally approaching a critical phase. Depositions had been scheduled. Both sides would take sworn testimony before the case moved toward trial. Barnett traveled from Louisiana to Charleston for the depositions. On Thursday, March 7, 2024, he sat for 7 hours of cross-examination by Boeing's lawyers. On Friday, March 8, he sat for 4 more hours of direct examination by his own attorneys. His lead lawyer, Rob Turkowitz, later described it as explosive. He called Barnett the best witness he had ever seen. He said Barnett knew these documents inside out. He said he could see Barnett's confidence building as he told his story under oath. Friday evening, Barnett told his lawyers he was tired and wanted to drive home to Louisiana that night. He had told his mother he would be home by Sunday. Turkowitz suggested they take a break for a week or 2. But Boeing's lawyers said that no more depositions could be taken from any other witnesses until Barnett completed his testimony. Barnett relented. "Let us just get it done," he told them. "I have already been waiting for 7 years." He went back to the Holiday Inn. He never came to the conference room on Saturday morning. The official finding of the Charleston County coroner was suicide by self-inflicted gunshot wound. The Charleston Police Department investigated and concluded that Barnett died during a period of serious personal distress related to his participation in the whistleblower case. His legally owned pistol was found in his hand, with his finger still on the trigger. A note was in the passenger seat. "I can't do this any longer. I pray Boeing pays." Barnett's lawyers immediately and publicly disputed the conclusion. "We did not see any indication he would take his own life. No one can believe it. The Charleston police need to investigate this fully and accurately and tell the public. No detail can be left unturned." His brother Rodney said John was looking forward to having his day in court and hoping it would force Boeing to change its culture. Months before his death, Barnett had told a family friend something that the friend later repeated publicly. "If anything happens to me, it is not suicide." The official investigation found no evidence of foul play. The case he had been fighting for 7 years continued without him. His estate became the plaintiff. His family sued Boeing for wrongful death in March 2025, 1 year after his death, alleging that Boeing's campaign of harassment, abuse, and intimidation had contributed to the serious personal distress that the police investigation concluded had led to his death. Boeing may not have pulled the trigger, the lawsuit states, But Boeing's conduct was the clear cause, and the clear foreseeable cause of John's death. After Barnett died, more than 10 new whistleblowers from Boeing and its suppliers came forward with similar allegations about safety culture at the company. Another whistleblower, Joshua Dean, a former quality inspector at Spirit Aerosystems, which supplied fuselage sections to Boeing, died in May 2024 after a sudden illness, less than 2 months after Barnett. Dean had testified about being instructed to downplay or hide production defects on the 737 MAX. 2 whistleblowers, 2 deaths, within 2 months of each other. Both had been raising concerns about Boeing planes. Both deaths were officially determined to be from natural or self-inflicted causes. In 2024, Boeing pleaded guilty to a criminal fraud charge connected to the 737 MAX crashes. It agreed to pay $243 million in penalties and invest approximately $455 million in compliance and safety programs. No Boeing executive faced criminal prosecution. No Boeing executive went to prison. The families of the 346 people who died in the 2 crashes received compensation through civil settlements. The exact amounts are subject to confidentiality agreements. John Barnett spent 32 years at Boeing. He spent 7 of those years in Charleston, watching things he believed were dangerous happen to planes carrying hundreds of millions of passengers. He spent 7 more years in retirement, trying to get someone to hold the company accountable in court. He testified for 12 hours over 2 days. He said, "Let us just get it done. I have already been waiting for 7 years." He was found dead the following morning, before the 3rd day of testimony began. The next time you board a Boeing aircraft, think about the man who spent 32 years making sure it was safe. Think about what he said, it kept him up at night. Think about the note he left behind, asking that someone make the company pay. And then think about whether anyone did. If this case made you think about who is actually watching out for your safety when you board a plane, subscribe to Dark Verdict. We document the cases where the people responsible for keeping you safe were punished for doing their jobs. Every case here is verified and sourced. Hit subscribe. And if this story reminds you of the Vioxx case, where the FDA called their own scientists research junk, science, that video is on this channel right now. John Barnett, 32 years at Boeing, 12 hours of testimony. I pray Boeing pays. The case continues.